All right, hey everyone. It's Sunday, July the 19th at 1:36 a.m. in the morning. And I'm here with Aaron, and we just binge watched OUTCRY, the story of, or the case of Greg Kelley. It's 5 mini documentaries. Each documentary is about an hour long. We saw the first one. It's free. The first one is free. We saw that probably a few days ago. But Showtime has this thing where if you sign up for a 30-day free trial, you can watch the remainder. So I went ahead and gave them my credit card number, and if I cancel within 30 days, I don't have to pay anything. So you can watch all 5 mini documentaries for free, which we just did. We watched all 4 of them in one sit-down session. That's why it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to say I highly recommend, if you get a chance, you need to watch this series because it is really enlightening. I mean, it just confirms what we know happens so many times when innocent people get railroaded. And one of the lines that really stuck out in the 5 hours of video is when the coach said, if Greg wasn't so popular and wasn't an athlete, he wouldn't have all this support. And the only reason he got out is because he had overwhelming support, because he was a popular athlete that was loved by so many. But is Dennis Morgan Hicks a popular athlete? Was David Hinkson a popular athlete? Is Schaefer Cox a popular athlete? What about Amy Gonzalez? What about Jeffrey Winehouse, right? And you get to see an enlightening view of how the attorneys are, I don't know how else to say it, and I say it so much it becomes like you guys just get used to hearing me say it, but the attorneys are the children of Lucifer.
Except for his appeals guy.
He had one attorney at the end that appeared to have a soul, but he's a very rare individual.
He's looking forward to the compensation check.
Yeah, he's looking forward to the compensation check. I'm sure he wants a payday from all of this. But the attorneys cover for each other. They don't care about the innocence or guilt or pursuing justice. One of the big points of this movie is one of the investigators, the detectives, was asked, what is the goal of the outcome of your investigation? And he responded,
successful prosecution.
He responded, a successful prosecution.
That's the opposite of what Chris Ann Hall would say.
Right. The goal of your investigation should not be a successful conviction, but should be to get at the truth. And it's so obvious that he was pursuing a conviction at all costs.
With tunnel vision. With
blinders on. And so my wife is trying to go to bed because it's 1:30, but I need her to stay up just for a bit more because
that was a marathon.
The best time for us to do a recap on this sort of thing is right after we watch it.
Yeah.
And she's already like putting on her sleep eyes, and it's like, just stay with me for a little bit. Okay, so they even like brought in a second accusation from a second child.
Fabricated it.
And they didn't have anybody call them.
To strengthen their case, they fabricated a second child molestation.
They fabricated a second child molestation, and he specifically said, the prosecutor, well, it would strengthen our first case. And it wasn't like the second case
They solicited a second case.
Right. They had to cold call parents that had been to the house and plant the idea that their child had been molested. And then the child, thank God, recanted his story and said it never happened.
And they withheld exculpatory evidence, which was the SpongeBob SquarePants pajamas that everybody knew that the real offender wore, but they didn't even tell the defense attorney. And the defense attorney was in bed with, friendly with the real perp's family. It was terrible.
There's a guy by the name of Jonathan McCarty that they believe is the actual perpetrator. and he's free now, by the way. And he was convicted, I believe, of, well, they tried to charge him for rape, but he ended up, I think, taking lesser charges to get less time.
Yeah, he raped this other girl and drug raped her, and he only did 2 years in prison.
But they wanted to put Greg Kelley.
2 years.
They wanted to put Greg Kelley away for 25 years with no parole. And that was the only reason they gave him that what they called the least sentence they could give him is because he waived his right to an appeal.
But he did get a habeas appeal.
So, yeah.
Was it? He did get an appeal even though he waived it, right?
Well, because they said there was new evidence, I believe.
Oh.
But the police chief, which I believe is Chief Manis, and Detective Daly,
this is the best part. The police chief, you wrote his quote down. Can you read the best part of the whole movie, in my mind?
He said, due process is a standard in law that does not exist.
There you go.
In other words, he doesn't think anything was wrong with the due process accorded to Greg Kelley. But when you watch the 5 hours of video, you obviously see problems with due process. But here's the deal. You can tell that Chief Manis and Detective Daly are best friends.
He got promoted to over 10 other detectives right after. And I had a problem, too, with the Texas Ranger fabricating evidence that they said he was on a friend finder for casual sex, and he never was.
Yeah, the Texas Ranger fabricated evidence, and they called the website, and there was no accounts with any of those names that ever existed at that particular website. But see here, the Texas Ranger who made him take a lie detector test after hours of questioning over and over again in order to break him down. The Texas Ranger, I believe the Texas Ranger was told by his higher-ups, you got to protect the integrity of the system. See what movies like this do. If you actually spend the time and watch the 5 hours, it ruins your faith in our criminal justice system. Even though at the end they have a little party in the courtroom.
Yeah, but the judge never apologized.
Yeah, see, Greg Kelley was due an apology because he was actually exonerated of all guilt, and the judge never apologized. So that was something we were looking for, but we never heard. But the defense attorney that Greg Kelley originally had, she put her own interest, because in order for Greg Kelley to get a possible exoneration and have the Criminal Court of Appeals in Texas look at his case, he was arguing ineffective assistance of counsel because she did a lot of stupid stuff. One of the stupid things that she did, when the little boy did an outcry, and he had just turned 4 years old. Keep in mind, he was darn near 3 years old, but he'd had a birthday just a few days before. So this 4-year-old boy that does an outcry, and he says, Greg, put his pee-pee in my mouth, right? That's his words, right? So this little 4-year-old toddler, just turned 4, obviously something happened to him, and he uses the name Greg, right? But here's the deal. They never asked the little boy to pick Greg out of a lineup. They never showed him pictures. And this Jonathan McCarty guy looks like the twin brother of...
It's uncanny how much the two men or teenagers look alike. It's really, it's weird.
When they put the pictures side by side, Jonathan McCarty and Greg Kelley look exactly the same. It's like if you didn't know they were different people, you're thinking to yourself, this is the same person. And how stupid do you got to be that this little boy is doing an outcry of sexual molestation and what they call super aggravated sexual assault, and you don't ask the little boy to pick Greg out of a photo lineup? Are you kidding me? And, it's like a little 4-year-old boy. He don't know who real Greg is. So, and also, because the defense attorney, I think her name was Cummings.
Yeah, Cummings, she didn't even look at the other suspect, even though lots of family and friends and other people said that they need to investigate the other guy. She refused to put her detective on that.
Right. And
she even put her hand up in front of her face and said no.
Yeah, so other people were coming to her and saying, you need to investigate and look at Jonathan McCarty, who also lived in the house and is the son of the woman running the daycare. And she said, nope, we're not going to look there.
And she had also defended 3 of the boys in that house for previous offenses.
Right. She had previously defended the other boys in the house, I think including Jonathan McCarty, on other offenses, like my wife said, including sexual offenses with minors.
Crazy.
It's insane that she would ignore that. And obviously, she built her case around protecting Jonathan McCarty.
Yep, Greg was framed.
Yep, Greg was framed. It's obvious. And they let the guilty man go free. And they sent Greg to prison for 25 years.
Yeah, and the police chief called the supporters cult members.
Oh, right. There was a Mouth of the South dude, which is, it's kind of funny because we kind of do the same thing. But this Mouth of the South dude is like standing up for Greg.
What's his real name?
I don't know. I think Chris, maybe?
We didn't write it down?
No, I should write his name down. But
we should talk to him.
Yeah, he seemed like a really good guy, and he had the wherewithal and the courage to publicly support what everybody else said was a monster. And because he was raising a stink on social media about Greg being innocent and being framed by the Cedar Park police, the police chief referred to him and all the supporters as a cult, when in actuality, Greg really was innocent. And I believe the prosecutor, her name was Jana Duty, I believe.
She committed suicide.
She committed suicide just a few months ago. And everybody's getting promotions. One of the other it reminds.
Yeah, and the prosecutor became a judge.
The other prosecutor, it got promoted to a judge by Governor Greg Abbott. You got to be kidding me! Listen to this. In Kent Hovind's case, remember the prosecutor? I forget his name now, but he got caught with sexual material, and he was trying to have sex with a 5-year-old. What was his name? Oh my goodness! Atkinson. I think it's John David Atkinson or something like John Roy David Atkinson or something. But he was a prosecutor in Ken Hovind's case, and he got caught trying to have sex with a 5-year-old, and he committed suicide, very similar to the prosecutor committing suicide in Greg Kelley's case. Now, it's also the Texas Ranger fabricated evidence about Greg Kelley having accounts on Adult Friend Finder for casual sex, and he never apologized for that either. So, listen, we could go on and on. We cannot recount the entire 5 hours in this recap. But what I'm going to try to ask you...
We got to go to church,
go to bed. Yeah, we got to go to church, and we got to be there early because we got to set up the camera. But listen, you've got to watch this 5 hours. I know, it's the only thing that you're going to have to... The first episode is free, right?
But you already explained that.
Yeah, the other 4 hours you have to give a credit card number for. And I don't want you to give your credit card number to Showtime, but if you're so inclined, they have a 30-day free trial. And it's worth it just to see a documentary expose how bad the criminal justice system is.
Remember that other one, To Catch a Murderer, on Netflix?
Yeah.
That guy's probably still in prison.
Yeah. Because here, Greg Kelley is a popular athlete that has the overwhelming support of his community. It's called Making of a Murderer, I believe, or To Make a Murderer or something.
Greg's mom was a believer, and Greg is a believer. And if Greg listens to this, I want to tell you, I wish you would go to work for the Innocence Project instead of ruining your brain cells playing football.
Well, Greg Kelley is an aspiring football player, and he's going to do with his life what he wants to do with his life, and he wants to play football. I will say this about his girlfriend.
Angel.
I was incredibly impressed with her commitment to stand by her man, right? during all of this, when the community and the prosecutors,
The news and
the news and the media were calling him a monster. And I want to say that he was convicted on the testimony of this toddler, right? Who else has been convicted on the testimony of a toddler? Charles Dyer. Charles Dyer. And they withheld exculpatory evidence, and the prosecutors had blinders on. It took 3 trials to convict Charles Dyer. But see, Charles Dyer,
He wouldn't go infiltrate the militia. That's why he's in prison.
he wouldn't infiltrate the militia. The FBI approached Charles Dyer and said, if you infiltrate the militia, we'll make all of your legal troubles go away. And so Charles Dyer's still sitting in prison. Who else is sitting on Alabama death row on the testimony of a 3-year-old toddler? Dennis Morgan Hicks. Listen, I'm grateful and glad and joyous that Greg Kelley has managed to escape the trap. But he is a very good-looking athlete with overwhelming community support. There are other people, just like the guy at the school said, if Greg Kelley wasn't a popular athlete, he would not have the support that he has. And you can't tell me that what happened to Greg Kelley doesn't happen to other men all the time. Other men and women. Amy Gonzalez, Patricia Parsons, Karen Vernon.
I have to say, though, this is a very difficult charge to prove.
Yeah. A statement made during the documentary resonated with me, that when you have an outcry of a toddler, of sexual abuse, well, an adult woman, I think everybody knows that adults can lie. But when a toddler starts talking about someone put their pee-pee in his mouth, it's like, that's a serious thing, because toddlers shouldn't even know about that. How would you even make something up like that? So obviously something happened. And when a woman says it, it's like, well, you don't even know whether to believe her or not. And I think that all charges should be investigated, but I think that women who make false charges should get the same sentence as, if it's proven they're lying.
It's so difficult to prove.
I know. Okay, right. Okay, so let's go back to the toddler. I was on a point I was going to make, and I forget.
The toddlers, they can coerce them, and they're
not
reliable.
Well, they okay. One of the points made during the documentary is you can ask leading questions before the interview, right? And then you plant these seeds in the toddler's mind.
They showed how it was done with a doctor.
They showed a typical doctor visit where there was no touching of any genitalia, and then they planted the seed with adults asking the question to these toddlers after a videotaped doctor visit, and then they would come back months later and they would show the toddler a doll and say, what happened to you during the doctor visit? And because the seed had been planted with the questions earlier, the children would show like graphic genitalia touching, even though the visit was recorded on camera. Nothing like that happened.
The parents weren't even in the room, it didn't look like, when the child was being interviewed.
Yeah. So there was another point. I'm struggling to remember a thing I had in my mind before we got off on a tangent.
About the child? About
the child and his testimony. And I know that they can plant seeds and coach the testimony of the child. And in Charles Dyer's case, the mother, they were in the middle of a bitter custody dispute, and the mother coached the child with computer evidence, and she had pornographic material on her computer. And when the child discussed the surrounding room, what the room looked like, Charles didn't even have that color bed or couch. That color bed or couch only existed in the pornographic pictures. But Charles didn't have, I forget if it was a green couch or a white couch, but whatever couch the child described, Charles didn't have that color couch. That color couch only existed in the pornographic photos that existed on the mother's computer.
If anybody listens to this and finds out why that Texas Ranger made up those friend finder accusations, I'd be curious to know about that. And the other one he said was the Texas Ranger said that he said something else that didn't seem true either. Oh shoot.
Well, he
there was a couple of things he said.
He really pressured him on the lie detector test, put him under a lot of pressure. He passed all the questions except for the third question. But the first,
He said that he was like a sexual. What did he say?
he was engaging in high risk sexual activity.
And he was like addicted, or
Yeah, he used the word addicted.
out of control.
Right.
I don't know.
And
he said a bunch of really weird
the
stuff.
the Texas Ranger refused to be a part of the documentary, and the Texas Ranger was a complete arrogant, full of himself. You could tell by the way he conducted himself. I just saw
It also reminded
complete
me of
arrogance.
Daniel Hortzclaw.
Yeah.
He's the Christian police officer who was accused of raping a whole bunch of black women, and it seemed like they solicited those accusations as well in his case. And
Yeah,
he's
I was
still
thinking
behind bars too.
I was thinking it very similar to Daniel Holtzclaw as well. I was thinking that what happened with Greg Kelley also happened with Daniel Holtzclaw. There was a lot of similarities. So they didn't ask the child to pick Greg out of a lineup. There was, like my wife mentioned, the SpongeBob SquarePants, and because Jonathan McCarty totally denied ever wearing them, and yet there were multiple witnesses claiming they saw John McCarty in SpongeBob SquarePants, but because he denied it so animately, he knew that had to be part of the testimony of the child. That's like a huge red flag that he's really guilty. So anyway, just the wickedness of our criminal justice system is on full display. And my only concern is people are going to think it's a one-off and it was an abnormality. And it's just, only happened to Greg Kelley. But thank goodness we caught it. And thank goodness justice finally came to play. But even Greg Kelley may not know there are lots of men and women who are unjustly targeted and imprisoned.
Yeah, so when you're finished playing football and ruining your brain cells with all those tackles, look into those cases.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of innocent men and women on our website,
Year of Jubilee. It's a free resource library for innocent or over-sentenced, mainly political prisoners.
Yeah. All right. Watch the documentary. I highly recommend it.
What are you going to use for a screenshot?
I could use a picture of Chief Mannix, who.
Yeah. Or the DA or something.
Or how about the lady who committed suicide?
Well, she's already gone. I would put up the bad guys that are still alive.
Yeah. So Greg Abbott promoted the prosecutor to a judge. It just goes to show you how evil Greg Abbott is. Greg Abbott has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Listen, our criminal justice system is wicked to the core. And for people that say no justice, no peace, my response is no God, no justice. If you want to kick God out of the courtrooms and kick God out of our society, you can't even come close to having justice in society. And that's where we are today. All right, take care. It's time for us to go to bed. We got a big day tomorrow and we got to get up early. Watch the movie, All Glory to Jesus Christ. And we need to repent for our wicked ways. Take care.